Doctors and everyone, welcome to the OET Prep Podcast. And today we're not going to be talking about OET. We have a very interesting guest here. I'm not going to do a spoiler. I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself to us, and we will delve deeper into our conversation today. Do I call you Dr. Rogers or just Rogers?
Roger, Roger.
Okay, so I get a
Okay.
pass. Yeah, I want the conversation to be more friendly. So, Rogers, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners today?
So my name is Rogers. I'm from Kenya, and I'm a medical doctor in my first year of residency in internal medicine. I am currently in Germany to start a new job. Yeah, I studied in Slovakia before, and I worked a couple of months, and moved this month to Germany.
Okay, great. Cool. I mean, I've been to Kenya before. My first visit to Kenya was last year. I had one or two things to do in Kenya, and I think I felt Kenya was a really beautiful country. I spent most of my time in Nairobi. So, did you grow up in Nairobi or you grew up somewhere else in Kenya?
No, I grew up. I didn't grow up in Nairobi. I grew up in a small town like 2 hours away from Nairobi.
Okay, great. Cool. And what's the name of the town?
Uh, oof, no one knows it, but it's called Embu.
Okay.
Embu.
All
Yeah.
right. Cool. So, which languages do you speak?
So in Kenya, I would say everyone is sort of bi or a trilingual.
Okay.
Kind of depends. So we have a national language, which is Swahili, which everyone speaks. Then there's the official language, like it's English. It's just official in the sense that everything you learn in school is in English. All the documentation you get from the government is in English. So in that sense, so English, Swahili, and there's tribal languages because
Okay.
the country has like different communities, 42 different communities. So yeah, I think every Kenyan speaks, I think at least either the official, I think everyone speaks the national language, so Swahili. Almost everyone speaks the official language, English, and then one of the community languages. So I speak those three languages. So one is Kikuyu, that's my community language, Swahili, English. And I came to Slovakia like 7 years ago. It's 7.5, almost 8 years ago. And I studied Slovak. I just learned Slovak and I studied the whole of the university in Slovak. And then I started learning German. So that was in.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get back to the conversation of Slovakia, right? But before that, I just want to know a little bit more about, why did you decide to study medicine?
That's a good question. My dad is actually a pharmacist, and in Kenya, like pharmacists also get the title doctor, and so no one ever called him like his first name. Everyone just called him Doc, Doc, Doc. Like, he's a pharmacist, but like people just called him Doc.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like everyone always kind of like looked up to him, always gave him like respect or something, and I always liked that. I mean, it's a bit vain, but I liked it, and I always wanted to get that title as well.
Right.
And then I realized like there's an actual doctor, and then I found out what actual doctors do, and I was like, oh yeah, that's still cool. And doing that cool stuff, I mean, handling patients, diseases, and yeah, it's the reason why I chose medicine. It was
Right.
it
I
just
mean, I can totally relate because in Ghana, being a doctor is also a very big thing, right? So if you have a doctor from your family, it's prestigious, right? The family gets that sort of
yeah.
prestige. So it's not very uncommon for parents to kind of like push their children to go study medicine, even though I do not agree that parents should be making that decision for kids. So, yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing the story. But are you sure it's not about the money also? Because, I mean, we know that in Africa, doctors earn pretty good amount of salary. So wasn't that also a drive for you to go study medicine, or it was just about like that influence? Were there any other influence besides that?
Um, I would say because I always started at a young age, like I didn't, at that age, I didn't really know the value of money, or you at that age, you're not really thinking, oh, I want to get a job or become rich or something. I just wanted the job because it's like cool, like everyone likes the job, everyone respects this guy. Like, I think later on, I just carried on this like want, wanting to be like a doctor, and yeah, I don't think the money ever mattered, but I guess it solidified like the one thing, because it's like, yeah, you get solid job security and I guess a decent salary almost everywhere. So I think that was just like the icing on the cake to make sure, like, yeah, okay, yeah, I definitely want this. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And how old were you when you made that conscious decision to become a doctor?
Oh, that's, I would say like 7 or 8 or 9, some around that age. Yeah, I
Okay.
can't really put my finger on it, but I would say around that age.
All right. So I can totally agree with you now that it wasn't
Yeah.
because of the money, right? You convinced me now. All right, great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So why Slovakia, right? I mean,
Oh, good question. Yeah, I've gotten that question like the last 7 years. Like every time I was in Slovakia, someone always asks, "Why Slovakia? Like, why not Austria? Why not France? Why not England?" Like, the answer is simple. I actually did try to get into a lot of countries. I tried in the US, but then yeah, it's complicated. You have to be a citizen or permanent resident. The UK fees were so expensive, and in the end, I got information that there's like scholarships, government scholarships that happen between like different European countries and
right.
African and Asian countries. So I saw an ad in the Ministry of Education's websites. They were advertising like scholarships to Slovakia, and so I applied and I got one.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Was it very competitive to get that scholarship?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's super competitive because I remember when we went to apply, there were so many people. There were just so many people, and there were only like 5 slots. But in the end, they decided to give us like 10 slots.
Right.
So yeah, but there were so many people. There were like thousands and thousands. There were so many people. It took so long because there had to be so many selection processes. Like you get an email like, okay, yeah, now you're through to the next round. Okay, now you're through to the next round, and yeah, so it was really competitive. Yeah.
Okay, great. So there was a lot of shortlisting, but so that means you're a smart person. That's why you managed to get in. All right. So let's talk about Slovakia, right? How did you feel when you arrived at Slovakia the first time? And before you went to Slovakia, did you know anything about Slovakia?
Did I know anything? I actually got that question in the interview.
Right.
Like, of course, I, and you know, the funny thing was the same day I had the Slovak interview for this scholarship, I had my SAT exam because I was still thinking about going to the US. So I was
Right.
concentrating more on the SAT exam than actually for the interview. So I was in the interview room and they asked me, "Do you know anything about Slovakia?" And I was like, I forgot to research. Like, I
Oh
didn't know
man.
anything. And I just said, like, oh, I know it was Czechoslovakia and now it's Slovakia. Like, at that time, that's the only thing I knew. I should have known more. And, but yeah, I still somehow got through.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's awesome. Anyway, yeah, I feel like my story is also quite similar to yours because I'm also an FMG, which is a foreign medical graduate. I went to medical university in Russia. But to be fair, I knew quite a lot about Russia before going to Russia because I mean, Russia is a big country and it has a lot of history and, Russian culture. I think it's also uh, well known across the globe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would have also had a really hard time saying something about Slovakia. I mean, I do know that at some point they were one country with Czech Republic, and that is pretty much the only thing that I know about Slovakia. So yeah, don't feel bad about it. So you came to Slovakia, right? Different culture. Was it the first European country you were visiting in your life, or you had already had experience traveling before going to Slovakia?
Um, I had experience maybe visiting other African countries, but not really outside of Africa. So it was my first time in Europe. Yeah, it was different. It was weird because everyone looks different. It's everyone speaking a new language. Yeah, but I had friends like I said, like there were nine other people who got a scholarship, and we all went together. So at
Right.
least I had like some people who were there. Like we went through all these culture shocks together. Like from going to the supermarket and not understanding a damn thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it was a lot. Yeah,
I
I
can
guess.
relate. It's the same. When I went to Russia, the only thing that I knew was "Здравствуйте," which is like "hello," and it was a really tough time, right? You go to the shop and you cannot understand anything. You get on a bus and you don't even know how to pay or something like that. So I also definitely did go through some cultural shock when I was a student in Russia. And the thing was, I wasn't in Moscow, which is a big city, which is used to foreigners. I went to university in a very small city,
All right.
which means there were just like few foreign students there, and like English wasn't popular in this city. So that means you like your only option was to learn Russian language to be able to communicate with people. Okay, cool. So what were some of the cultural shock that you experienced in Slovakia?
Um, I think the very first one was apart from the language. I think everyone was so I don't know, cold. Everyone just looked sad or angry all the time on the streets. Everyone was just like um, they look all depressed for some reason.
Right,
In Kenya, it's so different. Everyone's like always bubbly, always happy, smiling, or chatting on the streets. It's so noisy.
right.
There, it was so quiet. Everyone is like just minding their own business. It seemed like there was a very serious like attitude or atmosphere around. I think the other thing was food. Like, I remember going to the supermarket and I wanted to buy yogurt. I ended up buying cottage cheese.
Oh.
So there was a lot of new food involved. Um, we didn't have things to cook in, like pots and pans and stuff. So the first couple of weeks, we used to like eat at the cafeteria of the
Right.
dorm, and the food was like Slovak. So it was like so weird, like eating Slovak food. It was, I mean, there was some good food. There is some good Slovak food, but it was all new to me. Like the food was also, they like to put so much fat in their food, and so it was like something new.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess, yeah, yeah, and I guess also the weather as well. That was also so new. Like just going from because I came, I think about the same time as now, sometime end of August or mid August, and there was that transition from summer to like is it autumn? I keep forgetting. Yeah, to autumn, and
Right.
there was really strong wind, so strong wind. It was so cold. It was yeah. There's so many things. I remember as well. It was so weird. Like when you enter into an elevator, everyone says hi to each other. Like people just say hi, and when even if you don't know them. So in the dorm, you would get into the elevator and like people would just say hi, and then I'm just like, I don't even know you. I've never seen
Right,
you
but
in my
that's such a contrast from what you said earlier that like you go to a country where people really look cold. I mean, I felt the same about Russia, and you get it and people want to say hi to you, so it's such a big contrast. Like in Russia, nobody says hi to anybody in the elevator. So yeah, that makes me think that actually in Slovakia people seem to be really nice. But not to say that people in Russia are not nice. It's just like a
life.
cultural thing. They don't say hi to strangers. So that's how it is over there. Wow. Cool. Well, so did you live in the student dormitory or you rented your own place?
I lived in student dormitories the whole time I was there. So,
Okay.
like, the first year of language school in the dorms and throughout university as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also live in the student dormitory for like 3 years, and later I moved to my own apartment, which was kind of nice, you know. Like, especially after living in student dormitory for 3 years, it's always nice to have your own place. So, yeah, let's talk about the food. What is your favorite Slovakian food?
Uh, Favorite Slovakian food. Uh, it has to be. Um, I'm starting to forget Slovak, but like it's basically duck that's deep fried,
Okay.
and then there's like it's like a pancake, and then with the purple cabbage. I
Right.
forgot the English name.
Yeah, aber auf Deutsch Sauerkraut, right?
Sauer. Yeah, I think it's sauerkraut.
Yeah,
Like
or like I know it's very popular in Europe and especially in Germany, so they call it like sauerkraut. It's more like how do I even say it? It's
no, but it was actually sweet. It was
it's
actually sweet. It was weird. It was sweet. Like it's purple cabbage and it's sweet. I don't know if it's sauerkraut. I just hear the name sauerkraut, but I don't even. Maybe I've seen it before.
yeah. Well, it's actually steamed cabbage, right?
Ah, okay. Now I just googled it.
Yeah.
That's different. Like sauerkraut is different. Like the sauerkraut in Slovak, they call it, I think, kapučnica,
Oh, okay.
and
Right.
they eat that mostly on Christmas, like on
Okay.
Christmas Eve and on
Right.
Christmas as well. That
Yeah.
was also a culture shock because their Christmas is 24th of December. That's
Right.
the actual Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
So
Whereas in Kenya it's 25th, right?
yeah,
Right.
25th.
Same in
Yeah.
Ghana. We celebrate Christmas on 25th December.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's weird. Yeah, it was weird there. I mean, but I really like this. It's the duck meat is called kachatsia, and I forgot what the purple cabbage was, but then there was this other pancake-like thing. Um, I've forgotten the name. God, I forgot. But like this was like really good, and I also like the national dish of
Okay.
Slovakia called brinzové halušky. It was really good as well.
Right.
It's brinzové means sheep cheese.
Okay.
So it's basically like potatoes which are like steamed, and then they're mixed with goat cheese, and then you sprinkle some um, bacon on
Right.
top. And yeah, it's really good. I really liked it as well.
Right. Sounds very delicious. I mean, I've been to Czech Republic several times. I've been to Slovakia about 2 times. And one of my favorite food actually in Czech Republic is goulash and bread dumpling. I'm sure you know exactly what that is. And
Yeah,
it's like awesome, right? Anytime I go to Czech Republic, I do have that with like a huge mug of beer. Anyway, good. So let's go to the preparatory course, right? When I was in Russia, they call it Подготовительный kurs. That's 1 year of intensive Russian course, right? So I'm sure you had something
okay.
similar in Slovakia. So tell me about the whole experience. How was the course like? How was it structured? In between the course, did you have to study biology or chemistry or maybe some anatomy in between? So just tell me how the preparatory course of Slovakian language was like.
Yeah, so first, it's a program that runs, I think, 9 months, 9, 10 months from September to end of May.
Right.
So it's basically like the same as the Slovak university year,
Right.
which starts the same September to May. And from September to um, December, like you learn just language, like pure language. You would go to school like 8 a.m. and go home at like 2 p.m. And you would just learn Slovak. And in December, we did a B1 exam.
Right.
And then in January, we were divided into groups. So, like, it was dependent on what course you wanted to study in university. So, if you wanted to study medicine, like you were in the medicine group, there was the engineering group, there was the literature, history, because some courses in Slovakia are held in English, some in most in Slovak. So like so for some people, they stopped learning Slovak at that. They just had like the B1 and they just started learning some other stuffs like
Right.
history, Slovak history, or math or economics in English.
Right.
But for us in medicine, we started learning biology and chemistry
Right.
in Slovak. And at the
Right.
same time, we had also like B2 classes. So
Right.
the day was divided into two. So
Yeah.
you'd have like the first half, which was like biology and chemistry, and then in the evening we would do like the B2 language classes. So that was from January up to May, and yeah, you at the end of May you do an exam, a B2 exam. So when you finish, you get a B2 certificate, and yeah, then to get into medicine, you need to do an exam. So it's not like straightforward like into university. Everyone has to do the exam, and it's like 100 questions. That's biology and chemistry. So during the course, we used to learn biology and chemistry and also prepare for this exam. So
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
that was how it was structured.
And how was the exam? Was it like multiple choice questions, or it was more like essay sort of exam, or mix?
It was multiple choice. It's
Okay.
basically the way Slovak exams function. Like in
Okay.
high school and university, it's all the same. It's always like multiple choice questions, and
Right.
you get a booklet actually.
Right.
Like if you apply to university, they send you a booklet, a chemistry one and a biology one. Each has like 1,500 questions. I think 1,500 or 1,000. They keep changing them, so the number
Right.
now might be different.
Yeah.
And each question has 8 choices.
Eight
And
choices.
yeah, 8 choices.
Holy cow, are you being serious now? It's
Yeah,
just like everybody's used to five options and then you choose the single best choice, but eight. That's
yeah, it
crazy.
has 8. So, and only a few. Like there's no like given number that is correct.
Right.
So there's a couple. It might be 1, it might be 3, it might be 5, it might be 7, it might be one.
Right. Yeah.
It's this, but during the exam, you're going to have 100 questions only from each subject. So you're going to have out of the 1,500 questions, you're going to have only 100, the same exact questions, but you're only going to have 4 choices. Like they're going to reduce. The
Oh,
choices are also
okay.
going to be the same,
Right.
but they're going to remove a couple of them. So it's only going to be four
Right.
choices. So you have like 100 questions from biology and 100 questions from chemistry.
Right. Yeah, that sounds a little confusing. Well, actually, I find it more easier to choose a single best choice because that was the sort of system we had in Ghana, right? So you have these papers with the like A, B, C, D, and then you shade the single best choice. It's way easier, right? So for me, also, when I came to Russia, they did have multiple choice questions, and sometimes you have to choose like three questions. And if you choose two instead of three, you get like partially correct, and I hate that sort of system. But the system also in Russia is that most of the exam is more like interview based, right? So you have your teacher, and then you pick what they call it variant, right? So like direct translation is going to be variant. So you pick a paper, and then you have questions, and then you discuss it with your teacher. And I think it's actually a very effective system, especially in the days of ChatGPT, where a student can just Google the answer or ChatGPT the answers. So I think this whole interview thing it's way better, and I think more education systems should be moving towards that sort of interview. So you have your teacher in front of you, and then he asks you questions, right? If you know, you know, you should be able to give the right answers. Good. So I just realized that there's a lot of similarities between the sort of system
Yeah.
that we had because the preparatory course in Russia was also very similar. It was like 3 months of learning Russian, and after 3 months, you're expected to be more like A2 level, and then they introduce biology, and then they introduce chemistry. And at the end of 9 months, you have to take the Russian language exam. So you're expected to get like a B1 or B2, B1 slash B2, it doesn't really matter. And there's a lot of concentration on chemistry and biology. So once you're able to pass that, you kind of like go to medical school. And that was how it was. All right, cool. So let's go back to medical school, right? How did you feel during your first year in medical school? Because if I remember correctly, or from what you're saying, you did study medicine in Slovakian language. First 3 years of medical school, how did you feel? Were you very comfortable? Were you confident with your level of
Um,
Slovakian? Were you able to understand your lectures?
Good question. And it's something like I always like emphasizing to people. You should never study university like in a different language if you don't have um, if you have like less than C1,
Right.
like you need to have like a C1 because um, we went to university with like a B2 certificate, and I can tell you it's not enough. So the first, like everyone I knew, all the foreign students who studied in Slovak, because there was two programs. There's like the English, and then there's like the Slovak program. So we were put, if you got the scholarship, you were put in Slovak program, and it was really hard. It was really hard. There were times when you go to class and you don't understand anything. So it was very difficult because you would go to lectures and you have to go home and read again, or you have to read before so that it can make sense during the lecture.
Right.
So yeah, it was very very difficult. But the thing is, when you're surrounded by the language and you have to read it and communicate, you learn very fast. So the first year was tough. The second year was better. The third year was, I would say it was like I was used to it. So I
Right.
didn't have a problem with doing exams or anything. Yeah, and we had the same system as like you just mentioned. Like our exams are mostly like 3-step exams. So you have the first, which is like it's like a written exam, just
Right.
the same as like the entrance exam. Like you already have like 500 questions or 1000 questions, and you only get like 50, and you have to pass the test. Then after passing the test, you have a practical exam. So depending on what subject it was, so maybe it was like anatomy, then you would get the cadaver and you would get like little pins
Oh
on
yeah, pin
different.
sets.
Yeah, and
Right.
the guy would just come in like, what's that? Like, what's this artery? What's this? What's this? Describe this whole part, everything.
Right.
Dissect this. Okay, push it open. What's that in there? What's this space? What's this triangle called? And then after you pass that, then you go to an oral exam.
Right.
So during the oral exam, it was like what you said you guys had. So you get like a small bag,
Right.
and it has like there was like pools, so like
Right.
there's like anatomy of the head, anatomy of no, there was like muscles, there was like nerves and organ system. And so you pick like a random paper from each pool. So maybe
Right.
you pick like muscles of the arm, and then you pick like cranial nerves, and then you pick I don't know, like the heart anatomy. Yeah, and then you have to discuss all of them. Like you
Yeah.
just start speaking, and yeah, the professor can like stop you at any moment and ask further, or ask something else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
so during my third year, I was already used to it. Like I didn't have problems with these exams, and I felt even comfortable enough to like just study in English at home because I knew I had enough language to like reproduce
To
it
express
in
yourself.
Slovak.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah.
actually did the same. When I go to the third year or fourth year, that's when we did more clinical things. I would read in English, and then during like exam, I would express myself in Russian language because I was very comfortable with Russian. And I mean, I feel like in English also we're exposed to a lot of information. You can just go on YouTube or you can find some
Yeah.
podcast, and like that's a really good way to learn. Actually, we did say pincette, right? That's more like in Russian they say pincette, but I think in English is going to be forceps, right? That thing that you have that
Forceps,
you need
yeah.
to pick up the nerves and the muscles and stuff like that. Okay, so what about your anatomy exam? Was it more integrated with like clinical aspect of medicine? So, for example, you like maybe you point to a nerve. Could your professor ask you, okay, so if there's an injury to this nerve, what is going to happen to the patient? Like, what kind of pathology do we expect to see? Because like when you read all these USMLE preparation books, one thing I like about it is there's a lot of integration with clinical medicine. Or your exam was just like your anatomy exam was just like theory, right? Just tell us about the nerves.
It's, yeah, basically, it was just theory,
Okay.
like just theory. Like they want to know that you know, like what's this cranial nerve, like maybe the function. They would
Okay.
ask you the function as well. Maybe it
Right.
moves this or that, but there was no clinical relevance at all. No one would
Right.
ask you like, like the consequences of like a nerve not working or something like that.
Right, exactly. I totally understand. That's one thing that I like about the USMLE books because there's always that clinical integration. Um, right. Something that all my friends are usually kind of confused about because, like in Russia, we also do have um, topographic anatomy, right? I don't know why.
Mhm.
It's even hard to translate it into English, but they say topographiczki anatomy, which means topographical anatomy. And none of my friends have ever heard about it because, like, what the hell is topographic anatomy? Which was very different from like the
What is
proper
it?
anatomy. It's just I don't even know how to explain it, and honestly, I don't even see the difference between topograficzki anatomia and like the proper anatomy, right? But I one thing that I realized during topographical anatomy was it was mostly practical because like they'll tell us to suture some nerves and like all those kind of things, perform like a
Okay.
tracheostomy and those kind of things. So I feel like it was more anatomy, but it was more practical, like do something which is more like towards the surgical aspect of anatomy. So it was actually fun. And we had a very, very strict teacher, right? I think I had to take that exam 2 times because the teacher was so strict. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah. All right, what was your least favorite subject in medical school?
Hmm. I would say biochemistry. Like it's a tie. It's a hard tie between biochemistry in the second or third year, and dermatology in
Oh,
the like fifth year.
right,
Because I spent so much time learning dermatology, but there's just so much. Like it was just
right,
crazy. There's everything looked the same. It was so difficult.
right,
Same with biochemistry. It was like it was crazy. But it
right,
was all interesting. But it was just like I didn't like it. I didn't like either of them. They were like really
right.
bad.
I can
Yeah,
totally relate. I also hated biochemistry, and if I remember correctly, I had to take that exam twice. I didn't pass on the first attempt.
me too.
Oh, okay. So it's not a shame, right, to take it two
Yeah.
times, right? So have you ever used the Krebs cycle in practical medicine? Right now, you practice in medicine. We spent
Um,
hours and days of trying to memorize the Krebs cycle. Have you used it in your practice as a doctor so far?
um, no,
No.
but I remember one time when I first started working. I mean, like it just gives you basics, because I remember like when I first started working, I got my first patient, but I did not order like the labs.
Okay.
Like some other doctor already did like the labs, so I was just looking at the labs, and I remember seeing LDH, and I was like, oh, what is this? And then like I remembered it from biochemistry, like it
Right.
means like there's some kind of hypoxia going on
Right.
somewhere. So that was the only thing like I used. But we had actually in the fourth year, was it the fourth year? Yeah, in the fourth year we had clinical biochemistry, and that is very relevant to what to like residency, because it's basically about the labs that we order. I remember learning the tumor markers, like you use them like every day, like when you get patients who have like the red signs or the yeah, like no signs of cancer. Like,
Right.
yeah, like I would say clinical biochemistry was very important because I use that every day. Like,
Okay.
mostly because of like the labs when you're ordering the labs, when you're ordering like knowing what to order as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's but
it
like
makes a lot of sense. That's what I tell young doctors, or like not young doctors but young medical student, that well, like the pretty much the only chemistry you're going to be using in practical medicine is okay, there's an elevated of this and a decrease of that, and you just need to understand what's going on if there's an increase or
yeah.
there's a reduction of some markers. So yeah, that's pretty much one of the few things that we integrate from chemistry to clinical medicine. All right, cool. You are practicing medicine in Slovakia, or you did practice medicine in Slovakia after your graduation, right?
Um, Not immediately,
Right.
like because I always knew like I don't want to stay in Slovakia. Even like the first day I landed in medical school, I knew I don't want to be here. Like at first I thought I wanted to go to the UK, and then later on I was like, no. Um, then I decided to go to Germany. So when I finished school, that was last year, July. That was the end of July. I moved to Germany. I like did there's this thing like people call Hospitation in
Right.
German. It's like normally like you just say Hospitation like an observership. Basically, I think that's the proper translation. It's basically originally like it was used like maybe you know like you apply to work at a hospital and like you want to know like is it good to work here? Like, will I get along with everyone? So you go like and not only have the interview like with the boss, but also like spend the whole day or spend even a day, 2 days or a 1 week there, just to see like how everything runs, and then decide like, oh yeah, I
Right.
definitely want to work here. But with the advent of like many foreign doctors coming to Germany and the long waiting times to get your license. Most foreign medical graduates ask hospitals to like give them an extended observation period just so
Right.
that you can get used to the system and also like train your language, you know, like practice your language as well in
Right.
like a hospital setting. So I found a hospital that was willing to hire me like after I got the license, and so we had already agreed even before I graduate that after I graduate I will go there and do an observation until I got my medical license. Then I would start working there. So I would
Okay.
start residency there. So that's what I did for the first like 4 months, and then afterwards I decided like I need to go. I need when I got like an appointment to do like the exam. There's a
Right.
language exam that you need to do. I decided like maybe I need to focus like the whole day and not be in the hospital as well. Like just be to concentrate fully for the exam. So I ended the observership and I moved back to Slovakia and I prepared for the exam for 2 months. I was for December and January, and I did the exam in January.
Right.
I started working in Slovakia in February of this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, from what you're saying, the exam doesn't sound really difficult because you said it just took you 2 months of preparation in comparison to, let's say, the United States, USMLE, where a student take about 9 months to prepare. Yeah, that's a hell lot of preparation time. So 2 months, I think, I don't know, at least I think it's not that crazy, right? So how many hours on an average did you spend preparing per day?
Um, well, first, maybe I would like to clarify. Maybe you know the USMLE is very different because it's a licensing exam. It's
Right.
basically like what I had to like our state exams, you know, so that you can get your degree. Like you
Right.
get tested for knowledge, like medical knowledge.
Right.
But the exam I did called the Fachsprachprüfung. It just tests your language. Like even if you say something that's not medically true, they only focus on your language. Like at
Oh,
least, yeah, at least in where I did it, they focus on the language, and they told me that several times during the exam that we are not testing your medical knowledge. We just want to test
your
your
communication skills.
fluency,
Right.
and basically the aim of the exam is to prove that you can talk with patients, understand patients, you can understand documentation, hospital documentation, from family medicine physicians, understand, I don't know, documentation from homes for the elderly, and also speak to other doctors as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean
So,
that's what we do as doctors, right? We need to be
yeah,
able to communicate with
yeah.
doctors. I think
So,
that is one of the most important skill that every doctor must have. Communication, being able to communicate with patients, family, and also your colleagues. So I think it's actually good. So it sounds like the first stage to become a doctor in Germany is to have a good command of German language, right?
yeah, that's why I wanted to say, like, the preparation is not just 2 months.
It's a long
The whole,
process, learning
it's
the
a lot.
language.
It's like since I started learning German, like in my third or fourth year. So
Okay. All right.
because I mean, like they, like one of the things they test, like I said, is fluency. Like if you can just speak, you can just express yourself. You don't have to look for words. Like
Right.
if they just see that you can express yourself, you're going to pass the exam, in my opinion.
Right.
So it takes a lot more than just 2 months. You need to like properly learn the language and get to a point where you can just hold conversations with people. And I think that's like a C1 level, when you don't have to like, like open your phone and check the dictionary, or like I don't know, like you need to stop and think, oh, what's the word.
Okay.
When you get to that level, then maybe I would suggest that you start learning
Okay.
medical
All right.
medical stuff.
Yeah,
And
as you already know, I'm learning German and I'm currently at like B1 level by Eins. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm in the stage where I could hold like a fluent conversation with a patient, but I'm sure with time I'm going to get there. So it sounds like the
yeah,
FSP, which is the flashback proofing, it's very similar to the OET exam, right? Being able to communicate with patients and also
yeah.
understand documentation, write letters, and also talk to other doctors. It sounds pretty similar, right? Cool. So you did mention that you did an observation program. I don't even know what to call it, observation or whatever. Okay, let's just call it hospitation, right? That's like the original language. What was your level of German at that time? Was it like B1 level or B2? What could you say?
Um, at that point, I had done C1 courses.
Okay,
I had already done like a full C1 course,
right.
and I had done before the C1 course, I did like the B2 exam, got the B2 exam, and I passed the test. Then I did like a C1 course, and then I went for the observership. So I would say like I had C1 knowledge, but realistically speaking, I think I was still like B2, because it takes time. You just don't learn like the course and then automatically you're C1. You need to practice, you need to use it,
Right.
like it. Now I would say like I'm at a C1 level,
Okay.
but then I was like B2 level, I would
Right.
say.
Yeah, I actually heard that one of the biggest, there isn't really a huge border between B1/B2. I think the only difference is going to be the vocabulary, right? So B2, you might probably have more vocabulary. And also B2 and C1 also, it's more about vocabulary. So I think once you're able to cross to B1, then it becomes snowball from there, right? It becomes more easy. It's more like learning vocabulary and things like that. Good. So first time in a German hospital, you're doing your hospitation. How did you feel? Did you have a hard time understanding patient, communicating with your with your colleagues? Like I have a friend who also did something similar in Finland, and he's a doctor in Finland, and he was like the only thing that he understood during one conversation with a patient, right? He wasn't doing a conversation. A Finnish doctor was doing a conversation, and the only thing he could understand from the patient was, "I smoke," right? So, how do you feel like first experience in a German hospital doing your observation? How was it?
I would say it was hard. Um, I think I had very little problem understanding people. I would understand, I would say 95% of what everyone was saying.
Well, 94
But
percent. That's really good.
yeah, I didn't have, I could understand what people were saying. The problem was I didn't have like practice speaking so
Okay.
much because like you have to be spontaneous. It's not like in a language class where like your teacher gives you time. This is like real life and you have to be spontaneous. Someone asks you a question, you have to answer. Like someone asks you, I remember one time during the morning rounds, like a doctor asked me like, you know why I'm reducing the glucocorticosteroid dosage for this patient? And I was like, no. And then she asked like, tell me what are the like side effects um, of glucocorticosteroids. And I know them in English. I know there's like mnemonic, and so I'm
Okay.
starting like with the mnemonic, and I'm like glaucoma, and I have to think like what's glaucoma? It's a glaucoma. Like like it takes time.
Right.
It was really difficult, like being spontaneous and
Right.
speaking, forming like complex sentences, and then like speaking with the doctors because like they were my age, they were young people, they were like our age, and like we just talk about life and stuff, and it was hard because you can't like talk fast and stuff. So it was difficult, like in a
Right.
way. But I would say it was good. Like
Yeah,
I
well,
understand
actually, it's not
a lot.
even just about the language, like being able to give a spontaneous answer, but also, that sort of atmosphere where you're doing a ward rounds, you have your colleagues or friends around, and then the doctor just throws question at you. It can be very tense. It can be a very scary
Yeah, you have to.
experience, right? So, yeah, I can totally relate how difficult it was for you and having to think in a foreign language like at that time. All right, cool. So, did you get a lot of questions from the doctors during your?
Not really. Like I think I only got like twice,
Okay.
only two questions asked, and but most of the time they would tell me like if you don't understand anything, like ask.
Yeah.
Like if you have any question at all, just ask. Like
Okay.
they
Right.
would ask me a lot, but like not really test me. Like I, like how Americans say pimping.
Right.
Like not that sort of way, but just like
Okay.
like asking, why I'm doing this or that, like not testing my knowledge, but telling me like training you or teaching you, like
Right.
a way.
I
Yeah.
get it. What? But it's still slightly scary.
Yeah,
I.
true, true. Although it's still
All
scary.
right, good, good. So, how did you feel all in all after the hospitation? Did you feel like, okay, I think I like Germany, I like the healthcare system, and I would like to work here? Did you feel confident after your hospitation?
Yeah, I think that like cemented my my interest
Okay.
in Germany. So I saw the system and I was like, yeah. I mean, like when I was a student in my last year, I did like what's it called? Student exchange
Right.
program. This Erasmus. So I did it in Germany. So I spent like 6 months in Germany as a student, and I think after that I already knew like I want to stay here. So even when I came for the hospitation afterwards, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to stay here. I think maybe what I just learned was that yeah, I really need to up my German. I need to like learn more vocabulary. I need to practice more and be more spontaneous. And yeah.
Okay. So, what exactly do you like about the German healthcare system?
Good question. I like that it's first of all it's well funded when I compare maybe to where I've worked previously, like in Slovakia. one thing I kept even complaining about, like when I was working in Slovakia, was like there was always like the issue of finance. There was always like, oh, this drug is expensive, this test is so expensive, this one is expensive, this is this. Um, and coming here, it's different. Here, I mean, yeah, there's still like financial pressure on hospitals a lot because of the system. They
Right.
have this famous DRG system that's also used in Slovakia. It's like the same. I think it's used in most European countries.
Right.
Um, the problem is that it puts so much financial pressure on the hospital, because the hospital gets paid very little. Like departments like internal medicine, they get funded like they get paid so little, or like the same amount for someone who has the same disease. So if you come with pneumonia and you stay for 3 days, the hospital gets the same amount of money as a patient who had a complicated pneumonia but stayed at the hospital for 1 month. So the hospital is like super under pressure to make money. And in Slovakia, you could feel that. So, but in Germany, it's much less.
Okay.
It's much less.
Yeah.
And recently, the new health minister in Germany, Karl Lauterbach, he changed the system. He's actually a doctor himself and an economist, so perfect combination to have as a health minister. He changed the system and he's removing it and putting a system in place that pays the hospital not based on what they have but what they can offer. Like
Right.
if hospital can offer like I don't know, treatment for cardiology or pneumology, they receive money. So
Yeah.
it doesn't depend on like the specific patient, like what they have or how long they stay. So I like the effectiveness that they noticed the problem and they fixed it. And I mean, it's not perfect.
Yeah, I
Still,
actually I think there's
yeah,
no perfect healthcare system,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Actually, I did study healthcare system in my first year in public health, and one thing that a professor would say, we don't use the word quality healthcare system, but we should use the word like standard, right? And we were discussing the health system in America. We were mostly comparing with the European system, and you do realize that every system has its pros and cons. So at the end of the day, I think no single country has a perfect healthcare system. I mean, there are countries that have better, good standard of healthcare system, but every country has its pros and cons. So, for example, in Europe, the system is more like to try to minimize cost, right? Whereas in the US, it's more like, oh, you have a headache. Let's do a CT scan for you. It's fine. Let's do an MRI of the head, right? Whereas in Europe, you have all the waiting time and stuff like that. So there
Yeah.
is no perfect system anywhere, right? Yeah, but nevertheless, I still do prefer the European healthcare system. I like the idea of universal healthcare. So yeah, that's going to be a conversation for another time. Yeah, I think I'm going to have a special interview, invite somebody out where we discuss healthcare system around the world. All right, cool. So last question before we end it, right? Are you planning to specialize? Or you want to be an Allgemein Arzt, which is general practitioner, right? Do you want to specialize in, something specific?
Currently, my plan is to first do 3 years of internal medicine,
Okay.
because like my original plan was to be a cardiologist,
All right.
but then I was like, yeah, I mean, like you'll probably get bored
Right.
after a few years of doing the same things over and over again. So I decided, okay, maybe first I'll become an internist,
Right.
So, um, yeah, and that takes 5 years. It's first you do 3 years of internal medicine, so like you rotate. So every 3 or 6 months, depending on your hospital, you like change. You work in cardiology for like 3 months, then like pneumology for like another 3 months, and then rheumatology or diabetology and
Right.
endocrinology. So we call this in Europe the common trunk.
Okay.
For like these first 3 years of internal medicine, it's the same as surgery as well.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 years is called the common trunk, where you rotate. In visceral surgery, what's it called, vascular surgery, and all the other surgeries, you rotate so that you can get an overview
Mm-hmm.
of all the, like different parts of internal medicine or
Right.
surgery.
Yeah.
I want to do this 3 years first, and then after I have had like experience in all branches of internal medicine, then I'll decide like, okay, yeah, maybe now I want to become an internist, or I want to become a cardiologist, or I want to become like a Hausarzt or a allgemein Mediziner.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah, a family medicine physician.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's the plan.
All right, or
Yeah.
general practitioner. So in German, they say allgemein Arzt, right? Okay, cool. So just a quick overview of the process to become like a specialized doctor in Germany, which they say Facharzt, if I remember correctly. So first, you take your language exam, which is the Fachsprachprüfung, and then the next stage is to work for 2 years. And whilst working for 2 years, you're also preparing for the Kenntnisprüfung, which is like the general knowledge exam, right? Am I correct? And then once you
Yeah.
pass the Kenneth proofing, that is when you go into like your specialty training, right? You become a fat arts. Did I get it correct?
Um, Actually, it depends with like what experience you have, like when you're coming here. So if you are already a specialist in your home country, like I recently met someone from just today actually from Morocco,
Okay.
and she was a diabetologist in her home country. So she came and she went through the process, which is first like you need to prove your language skills. First of all, you need to prove you're a doctor. So you need to give them your diploma, you need to give them some other documents,
Right.
and then they tell you, okay, we can see you're a doctor. Now we need to prove your language
Proficiency.
proficiency.
Right.
So you have to do this medical language exam, so or technical language exam called the Fachsprachprüfung. Then after that, depending on where you studied, you can either become, if you studied in a country that's in the European Union, then your degree is automatically recognized, and you get the German medical license.
Oh, so wait, hang on a second. Sorry for interrupting. So if
Yeah.
you are a grad from an European university, you don't have to do the Kenneth proofing, right?
Yeah,
Oh wow,
exactly.
cool. So that's the main difference. Okay, so I graduated from
Yeah,
Russia, which is not part of the EU, so it means I would have to do the Kenneth proofing after the flashback proofing, right?
yeah,
Okay, right.
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now I do understand the process a little bit better more. But I do hear that the Kenneth proofing is actually quite difficult, and I think you only have like two attempts, right?
You actually have 3 attempts, if
Three.
I'm not wrong. Three.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you do it. It's if you go on the internet, there's the body that is responsible for like holding the exam. They publish statistics. So like how many people passed, how many people failed. So you can get an overview. You can check
Right.
online and see how difficult or like an overview of how people perform in the Cantonese Prüfung. But yeah, it's not only like people who studied in EU countries who like um, get the German medical license after. There is also a process called it's basically like a process where you compare your degree to the German degree. So you send in your diploma. According to the law, they have to do it. They have to do it automatically without you asking. So, and once they compare it and then they see, oh, you have a deficiency here, like you had only 500 hours of biochemistry, but in
Right.
Germany we now have 600 hours. When they see a discrepancy, then they tell you there's a discrepancy, so your degree is not equivalent, so you need to do an equivalency exam called the Kenntnisprüfung to prove that you have the knowledge.
Right, right. I think that
Like for
process is what they
example,
call Vergleichheit or something like that, right? Or
yeah, I forgot the name, what it's
yeah,
called. Yeah, but
I
basically,
think it's
yeah.
Vergleichheit. All right, cool. All right, man, thanks. I think I have a lot of questions, and perhaps we could actually discuss it a little later, not today. Else we're gonna have like a
Yeah,
long podcast, right? But I
yeah,
think you've given an overview of how to, become a doctor in Germany, which I find very exciting. Thank you very much, Dr. Rogers. Thanks for sharing your
yeah, sure.
experience about
Anytime.
being a doctor, your life in Slovakia to becoming a doctor in Germany. I think it's all very exciting, and perhaps in the future there might be doctors out there who might want to consult you and ask you questions, and I hope you'll be able to help them out. Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure.
Even though our focus is on OET, which is essentially
Mhm.
for the US and for the UK, but I'm sure there might be some doctors out there who might change their minds, just like you change your mind from going to the UK to Germany, right? Because the thing is, the UK and the US can be very challenging. And I tell people, like, you're 30 already, perhaps you could just learn German 1 year and go to Germany or Austria rather than spending like years to prepare for the USMLE. I think it's a really challenging exam. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing
Yeah,
experience. Yeah, all
anytime.
right.